In 2 months, Daggerheart will be 1 year old. The game was released by Darrington Press, or you may know it better as the guys from Critical Role make a series of games people claim to play, and was supposed to be their blockbuster super hit. If you're playing close attention to the Noteverse at all, I did a case on that Dragon game and the OGL crisis from a while back. Most of the OGL babies are either floundering in their sick, achieving a standing ovation at their local theater, or is Matt Colville convincing you to play 40 again, but he has a gun to your head and may be in cahoots with ancient evils. But Daggerheart already had its time in the sun for me and gave me a middling reception. Well, I hated it for several reasons, but we'll muse about that a bit later. But it seems I wasn't the only one. For a game that was supposed to be the game of all time, reception was quiet. Hell, some people even took issue with it. Then Critical Role Season 4 with Brennan Lee Mulligan launched, and it was using Dragon Game 5th Edition. All that hype, all that feeling, and their flagship product and flagship show broke apart. Now, Mr. Mulligan was in no way forced to use it, and for the campaign they are running, using it would be terrible, but it was interesting from a philosophical point of view. So here's the 411. Daggerheart is a mismatch of a lot of different story games, dragon games, and improvised theater to create a game solely around playing on an AP podcast that lost its own plot in the attempt to do so. If it was that easy though, I wouldn't be here. So I think I need to do a little bit of classical psychosurgery, neoclassical dismemberment and reanimation. Let's rewrite Daggerheart into, well, I guess we'll call it Axegut, but you can probably come up with a better name. But let's start from the top here. What is Daggerheart at its core basis? Well, it's nothing. The fruitful void of anti-canon where nothing matters and the rules are fake, which is one of the harder things because we can't base it around anything. We must accommodate the entirety of all fantasy at once in this 415-page PDF, and around 250 onward is just campaign frames and the appendix, which is the frames are endearing, they lose something important, which is to say a baseline fundamental. We'll take 5 Banners Burning, which is supposed to be Game of Thrones, Avatar, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Babylon 5 inspired war setting. After fitting everything together, the actual system, the actual fundamentals of that setting is basic faction relationships, and that's all it. The game isn't really built around the frames, but more of the frames are built around the game itself, leading to some stranger moments of most of them feeling like one-off ideas written by 2 to 3 writers than something to bite and chew. So we'll have to keep that, but keep in mind that most of our future discussions, we're building a game around being able to play anything from Dungeon Meshi to Full Metal fucking Alchemist according to the rulebook, while also being a fantasy dragon game. Our core system, the core system, is a 2d12 versus a target number. The gimmick being your hope and fear die. If your hope is higher, then something good happens. If your fear is higher, then something is worse off. This is fine because now you have 4 possible outcomes. Base system also has dubs be critical successes, which makes the results a lot weirder. Retooling here a bit would be crits on dubs, whether crit success or crit failure, just to speed things along. Though having to retrofit that entire hope and fear system would be difficult due to how baked into the system it is. Well, it's kind of baked in. A massive set of assumptions that it's baked in. This is where the Powered by the Blades of the Dark Apocalypse comes in with the assumption of a fiction-first method. GM narrates, player asks questions, find a problem, and then roll to fix it. Simple, right? Welcome to the Spotlight, which is they pointing at a tool in the GM's toolbox and making sure everyone knows it exists. You're free to do anything you want whenever you have the spotlight. This means the louder player will be able to overpower other characters, but if you have a producer or trained in improv theater, this is far, far easier to manage, but I don't have either of these, of course. Now, if the concept of improv theater spotlight tracking sounds annoying, you're right, because it extends to combat as well, with optional mechanics to actually track anything, so get ready for GM moves and twiddling your thumbs. Okay, we start cutting here a little bit. Duality die are fine. A bit of a gimmick, but we're making a 2d12 system and not a d20 system anymore. We have a curve, a notable one that focuses around 12-ish. The spotlight system is, well, it should be shot behind a barn when it comes close to combat or anything more detailed, but the basics are fine. But then more happens. Rolling with Hope grants Hope, which is a meta currency which lets you activate certain abilities, but also allows you to play your goddamn character because your right and experience skills, helping allies, or doing tag team roles all require spending a resource. Rolling Fear grants the GM a fear token which they can use to fuck you over. Maybe. Preferably they get the dangling shoes treatment. Experiences are normal and just a part of the game. Helping an ally is just part of the game, and so on. So what's Hope used for now? Preferably, I would just say it's purely a Benny system for extra D6s or activating abilities. But if you insist on using it more actively, there are ways to integrate a conceptual metacurrency about your heroic determination into a fantasy game a lot more elegantly. Maybe because you also have a second resource called stress to worry about, which is depleting anytime you do anything, it feels like, which can also be made more player-facing as a more conceptual set of inner reserves, a mixture of overhealth, determination, and raw talent. Stress isn't marked willy-nilly, it's your problem that you are marking stress because you are making a choice. Though again, metacurrencies deserve the axe, but we're working with what we have to work with. So we have the system basics, a 2d12 system with a stronger emphasis on personal choices and building resources, knowing full well we're running on fumes when we need it to and riding high when we're not. If Axegut is going to be anything, it's going to have momentum, always pushing yourself forward to accomplish a goal, burning yourself out when you're out of go juice in one last glorious push. But now we get to characters, our heroes. Because this is Dragon Game, we have races and classes. The classes cover all of our basics while adding the Seraph instead of a Paladin, and Guardian because Cleric's got the rope in this system. We'll use our Druid as an example of a more complicated one. Each class has 2 domains, evasion, hit points, a hope feature, and a class feature. Domains are sources of power which a class derives its power from, which is to say which cards they're allowed to pick. Because Daggerheart's innovative approach to game design is that everything must be fucking cards or card-like abilities. Your class has 2 domains which grants them their ability cards. Your mandatory subclass is a card, and yes, your race is a card, but I'm getting a little off fucking topic. Domains are on their face not a bad idea, allowing players the freedom to express themselves in different ways. My issue is that they really don't add much other than friction to the current form due to the most classes sharing another domain, which means sharing abilities with them, which is annoying. Of course, the hope feature is our way of using our favorite metacurrency of hope to do things. The druid being able to transform into a beast form without stress, but gain a +1 to an attribute as well. So we get to use our class feature, which takes away options we have already, but then we get to select a little options whenever we feel like. Most other classes don't get these, of course, but instead get a much more cut down variant instead. Most other classes are about a page worth of actual fucking content stretched across 2 or 3, but hey, what do I know? This does lead me to the domains themselves. As you level up and use far too many wonky tier system, you acquire domain cards. These act as a set of abilities the characters have access to. Rules as written you cannot share, and thinking of such thing ends with you going to the Pinochet helicopter ride. But there are a few issues here I'd like to talk about. First off, there aren't actually many to work with. The 3 tier 1s and 2 tier 2 through 10s make the list feel anemic, as these are your main abilities that you are able to use actively to do interesting things. It feels weird how few they are. Of course, the argument is they'll make more or the community will make more, but should you judge a game based on the potential for the studio or to do more with it or rely on the community to make it good? This is the core book, something that people paid actual money for. It's lacking. Secondly, let's take a look at Vicious Entangle. Oh cool, my druid spell. Now this is 1/3 of the entire card list here, and also the only spell. Or maybe we'll look at Death Maneuvers, having 2 trigger conditions on this ability. Or how Grimoires are the only way to cast actual real magic, but they too are limited due to the numbers of available cards. In an effort to simplify things, Daggerheart fell for one of the classic blunders of making these cards just reference materials, but they are not reference cards. Oh no, they are purely mechanical. That little symbol in the corner is your ability to recall the card from your vault, because after level 5 you can only have 5 cards available to you at any time. Any others being put in your vault you have to mark stress to get back in your vault by switching it out. Some abilities are passive, others are active. Some of these are even one-shots that are gone forever once used. I have no idea who approved this or what the plan was here outside of, well, making Daggerheart a content platform as they sell you a problem only so they can bother to fix it. Maybe. Luckily, I'm here, the last great game designer. In Axegut, We start from the guts. Your class gives you all of your basic kit, including a rudimentary spell system. We're going for a cheap fantasy novel here, so yeah, magicians are blasting people with magic missile from hour 1, but we can mix and match our domains as we please. If you want to play a Shadowbone warrior, I should be able to. If I want to play a Codex Splendor rogue, I also have my God-given right to do such. If you reject this, then you must admit that the cards are pointless, as you are just splitting up class abilities to create friction for no reason. It's a catch-22 on your ball court. The cards themselves will need a complete redesign at a fundamental level, because right now we run into the issue of them being caught between being a reference versus a mechanic. Pure reference cards mean anything related to the vault or advanced play have to be shot, but we want to stick close enough to the core of things, right? So we need to double, triple, quadruple the number of cards actually available. Most of these cards would fall into being purely passives, active passives, or per encounters, because 4E never died. We have 5 slots for our abilities, and they are taken up by a card that does something when it's active and gives it an effect when it's used or triggered or, God forbid, tapped. We'll take Wall Walk, for example. Our passive ability is a flat bonus to climbing and other events that may be useful due to our sticky fingers. However, if we spend a hope, then we can do the ability normally. It has a purpose passively, and now it has an active effect. Just about every single ability would need to do something like this or just provide an effect. The catch is that we'd also need to double up a lot more ideas if we want to fully commit to the bit. We should have scar cards, enemies that attack cards, disabling cards for effects, temporary effect cards, rocket magic item cards. But that's a bitch to do, and Axegut needs to be fun first. The issue with the cards now is that a majority of them are just boring, restrictive, or simply underwhelming for what they promise and need to be. If you want to sell cards, those cards must be interesting. I'll finish with the races, which are boring due to the fact that they too are cards and thus two abilities that range from being valuable to laughably terrible. They too require hope to activate, which you should just get used to at this point. Each race should have a lot of different options to let you mix and match what you are, but since they are printed cards, you can't have any fun like that, so fuck you. Backgrounds are also there in your communities, but are also cards, so I feel inexplicable hatred toward them, even though the conceptual idea is okay. How do you keep fucking this up, people? Alright, combat. We've been waiting. Some people may claim that combat isn't essential to the Daggerheart experience, and to that I counter, then why is it so goddamn important? Chunks of the abilities are exclusively for combat or directly inform parts of the combat system. Your character's abilities are almost always related to their combat effectiveness or making sure someone else is combat effective. So how is it? Not great. To summarize combat, I would say it's very bureaucratic in its approach. Flowchart core. Office punk even. So let's say I'm attacking you. First I roll my duality against your evasion, as it is your AC in that dragon game. You're 2 hit. Let's say I hit. Good job, Sir Wojak, you did it! I'll do damage now. But I won't, because you roll your damage and then compare it to the enemy's damage thresholds. A skeleton warrior has a threshold of 4/8, meaning that if our damage follows the following chart, that's how much damage we'll actually do. But since he's resistant to physical damage, we'll have to have it as well, further doing a whopping 1 damage, suggesting you're in the right range band to even hit. Now, of course, that's only his first action. Because he rolled with hope, the party still has the momentum and can act again. Only when they roll with fear, or the GM takes a fear token from the cuck stool, can the enemy perform actions. Armor, weapons, most of them trend toward basic and understandable. One of the core conceits of the game being that you can keep most of your equipment on hand as they raise through the tiers of play to get stronger. Sir Wojak's sword will continue being useful from level 1 to level 20. Though magic swords and such do exist, they tend to not be too flashy, as that would mean they need a card. The Axegut experience? We need to rewrite the whole mess from the ground up. The issue now is that it's a narrative system trying to LARP as a kinetic system. You have all of these hard numbers and very specific actions, but then you actually do them, you have this whimsical theatrical side to things. Of course, it's not theater combat with a rhythmic action to things, because that'd be too difficult and require some thought. So we tear it apart. Combat becomes more structured, more traditional, with a stronger emphasis on a single side mechanic with a character tokens which are an afterthought. You get 3 action points spent on equal amounts of protecting yourself yourself or going all out. This is not an innovative system at all, but there are things you can do now with the revamped cards and abilities. Let me burn actions to charge up or use domain cards, only for the bard to give me another so I could do it again. We need to shift this to a hyper-kinetic game, a constant forward momentum to the battle, and actions that players are always contributing something to and not waiting for the producer to tell someone else to shut up. Oh, and the equipment should just be draw steel kits. Matty is still trying to sell me an Iranian timeshare, but he, or one of his legion of designers, made weapon kits, which are kind of interesting. Bring back the magic kit, Matt, stop being a coward. Axegut is a conceptual idea, more of an ephemeral thought process on the KNS theory in its nature. Daggerheart sits here, neither committing to its narrative or kinetic gameplay elements. While I need to drag Axegut to the kinetic elements to make it do exactly what I'd want it to do. Can I blame anyone for liking Daggerheart, though? No, not really. I think the problem is that it was designed within this bubble of AP podcasters and renowned game designers who read a lot of indie games, know a lot of indie developers, and like rubbing shoulders with producers for their big break and forgetting that not everyone is like them. The metrosexual Californian enclave of Darrington Press exists in its own little world, inundated from the sins of the masses. Well, there's a deeper conversation to be held about these little enclaves that form within our hobby, groups unwilling or unable to communicate with one another outside of insults, forum posts decrying the other side, or shitting themselves on Twitter. Am I saying I am the great peacemaker, the man who will lead you all to the green paradise? No, I'm an asset on the internet making niche videos about elf games. This isn't a call-out post. This is what I do best. Game design. We're on our way to hell, one ring at a time. My name is Notepad, and this was Daggerheart and Axegut. There was more to talk about, to muse about, but this video is already far too long. Many thanks to the producers, as always, for their continued investment in the Notepad add-on experience. Godspeed and good luck.